Have you ever wondered why we say ouch when we're hurt? And why a single word like sorry can either mend a friendship or sound completely empty? This is exactly the kind of mystery that fascinated Ludwig Wittgenstein, one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. And he actually had two published books. In his first work, the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, that was published in 1921, was a highly abstract and logical attempt to map out the relationship between language, thought, and reality. So, Wittgenstein seemed to believe that language could be reduced to precise logical structures and that philosophy's job was to clarify those structures. But Wittgenstein himself grew dissatisfied with it. Decades later, after years of reflection and teaching, he produced a completely different kind of philosophy that was published in 1953, entitled The Philosophical Investigations. In this later work, he reversed many of his earlier views. Instead of treating language as something that could be captured in strict logical, he showed us a much richer, more dynamic of how words actually function in everyday life. Good day, everyone. Today we will focus on this later philosophy of Ludwig Wittgenstein. It is the work Philosophical Investigations that continues to shape how we think about communication, culture, and even the very way human beings understand one another.
For centuries, many philosophers believed that language works in the same way. Words are named for objects. This idea goes back to St. Augustine, who described learning language as a child by watching adults point to things and give them names, such as pointing to a chair and saying chair, pointing to a table and saying table. And this view to know a language to simply link words to objects. But Wittgenstein thought this picture was too simple and misleading. After all, not all words works like things. Consider this one of the examples. The word help doesn't mean an object. It's a call for assistance. The word ouch expresses a pain, not a thing. And the word if in a sentence doesn't refer to an object at all. Clearly, language is much more richer than just attaching names to an objects.
Wittgenstein's solution was to shift our attention. Instead of asking, what does this word stand for? We should ask, how is this word actually used? This led to his famous claim, the meaning of a word is its use in the language. To see why this matters, he asked to think about the word game. If we try to find one strict definition, we will run into trouble because chess, football, hide and seek, and video games are all games, but they don't share one single feature. Maybe some involve competition, some also involve skill, involve chance, or some are for fun, but there is no single essence that covers them all. So, Wittgenstein said that instead of one definition, these activities are linked through through what he called the family resemblances. So, what is this family resemblances? So, Wittgenstein idea of family resemblances is his way of showing how many words work in ordinary language. He noticed that we often think words must have one strict definition or essence. But in reality, many concepts do not function like that. Just let me give you an example, a family photo. So, not every family members looks exactly the same, but you will notice overlapping similarities. Maybe the same eye in your one sibling, the same nose in another, the the same smile also. But they don't share all one identical trait, but the resemblance is clear when you see the whole family together. So, words often work the same way. The category games is held together by a network of similarities, not by one strict definition. It also shows us that meaning is flexible and words can cover many different uses without needing a single core essence. This shows that meaning is not fixed by just only a definition. It is also found in the ways people use words in different contexts. So, to make this more clearer, Wittgenstein also introduced the idea of language games. So, he asked us to think or to imagine a very simple example, a builder and his assistant at work. So, the builder calls out the slab with an exclamation point, and the assistant immediately brings him a slab of stone. So, in this situation, the word slab is not the name of an object, nor is it a description. It functions purely as a command, and its meaning comes entirely from the practical activity in which it is used. Okay, so from this, Wittgenstein draws a bigger perspective that language is not one single uniform system that always works the same way. Instead, it is full of many different games that people play with words. So, just as games like chess, basketball, and so on, they have their own rules. So do the different ways we use language. So, for example, in giving orders has its rules, asking questions also has rules, even telling a simple jokes has its rules, and so on. So a word only makes sense when it is used within the right context and according to the rules of the activity. Think about it. For example, if someone shouts fire in a crowded theater, the meaning is not a description of flames, but a warning that causes people to run. One more is that if a judge says, I now pronounce you husband and wife, those words are not a description but an action that changes two people's legal and social status. So each of these examples shows a different language game at work with its own function and logic. So, what Wittgenstein is really showing us is that language is not big, one big function with a single set of rules. Instead, it is like a vast collection of smaller games that we gradually learn as members of a community.
Another metaphor that Wittgenstein uses is the toolbox. Imagine opening a toolbox and seeing a hammer, a screwdriver, plier, and nails. At first glance, they may all look very similar, just as the words appear similar on the page, but each have a very different function. Languages works the same way. Words might look alike, but their purposes are incredibly diverse. Some describe things, some command, some ask, and some expresses feelings. Treating all the words as though they function the same way is like assuming all tools in a toolbox do the same job. Wittgenstein also introduces the idea of forms of life. By this, he means that language is always connected to the activities, traditions, and practices of a community. Words don't float in isolation. They get their meaning from the way people live and interact with one another. A good way to see this is through a jargon. Jargon is a specialized language that certain groups use, like doctors, lawyers, scientists, or even gamers. To an outsider, jargon can sound confusing or even meaningless. For example, if a doctor says the patient is hypertensive, or if a gamer says that character got nerfed in the new patch. Those words only make sense if you are part of that community. For Wittgenstein, this is exactly what he means when he says, the meaning of a word is its use in the language. Within the medical community, hypertension is a precise way of talking about high blood pressure. Within gaming, nerf is a common way of describing when a character's abilities are weakened. But outside those forms of life, these words lose their meaning. So jargon is the living example of Wittgenstein's point. Words don't carry meaning by themselves. Their meaning comes from the rules of the language game and the social practices of the group using them. Dissolving philosophical problems. What does this mean for philosophy itself? Wittgenstein argued that many traditional philosophical problems are actually confusions caused by language. Philosophers often treat words as if they must always work in the same way. For example, asking what is the essence of meaning assumes there must be one single definition, when in fact, meaning is diverse and contextual. Another example is asking, what is the self? This mixes together different uses of the word I. Sometimes it refers to a body, and sometimes to consciousness, and other times to a role. By paying attention to how words are actually used, we can dissolve these confusions. Philosophy's job, Wittgenstein says, is not to construct new theories, but to clarify language and untangible misunderstanding. The philosophical investigations had a profound impact. The first is, it gave rise to ordinary language philosophy, developed by thinkers like J.L. Austin and Gilbert Ryle, who analyze how we use everyday speech. The second is, it influenced linguistics, showing that meaning must be studied in relation to context and practice. Finally, it even shapes debates in psychology and artificial intelligence, where researchers study how machines or minds understand words. In short, Wittgenstein shifted philosophy's attention away from abstract logical systems and toward the messy living reality of human communication. In conclusion, Wittgenstein teaches us that there is no single essence of language. Instead, there are many language games tied to the forms of life that we share. This is why philosophy, according to Wittgenstein, should not chase abstract definitions of words. Instead, It should carefully describe how words actually function in real life.
As Wittgenstein himself put it, the philosophy is a battle against the bewitchment of our intelligence and the veins of our language. By carefully examining how words are used, we can avoid confusion and gain a clear understanding of both language and ourselves. Thank you.